Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very exciting moment that we are experiencing here. Over 20, 26 or close to 30 professors, practitioners, students, many people of different walks of life have worked more than 6 years on a collective book with people from all over the world on a collective learning on SDG11, Sustainable City. They have shared their knowledge, their questions, their critics as well, and brought that great body of knowledge to be consumed and learned from in the whole world. We have with us tonight a representation of the author and editors, 2 of the editors out of 3, and 2 additional authors out of the greater number. And they are going to discuss some of their finding, conclusions, and sharing to give us the taste of what they came up with and what a sustainable city could look like and what it can do. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Klumpner, professor at ETH Zürich, but also the founder of Urban Think Tank. And he's going to talk to his colleagues and have an exciting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joël. So great to be here again at the Davos Lodge. Lots of exciting discussions, and this is maybe the last one for today. So we saved the best for the end. And I start saying that we have been asked to take on one of these 17 SDGs with our group that we formed, which is basically well represented here already. But we turned not to a particular homogeneous group of experts. We figured out that this unpredictable transformation that we are witnessing in cities needs actually to do something. Not only to make a book, but it needs to become an activist statement itself. So what we did was we invited very young, start-of-the-career professionals, and we paired them with the old foxes, so to speak. It has become a mentor project. And you will see this in the book that we're going to present in a moment. But to start the round of introduction here, I will go sort of on a meta level of what this book is about. This book is not a cooking book. The SDGs are not giving you directions what you have to do, and if you do it, then everything will be fine. We are entering in a phase of understanding that cities are also places of big trouble and problems. They're not only the solution, they're perhaps part of the problem. Remember, 2% of the world's surface is covered by cities, 80% of the energy is consumed there, 75% of the CO2 is produced there. So it's not only the place where you could solve the problem, you could also say, what about if we go from Henri Lefebvre's right to the city, the right to the no city? Maybe we should think about other parts of urbanization. So I lent here a concept from my old late friend Elmar Altvater from Berlin, who said about 20 years ago that urbanization is based on a conceptual tripod. There are 3 so to speak, driving forces which are behind urbanization 20, 30 years ago. And those driving forces were globalization, informalization, and urbanization. So we reviewed those concepts and we figured out that they have changed. And this is also how I like to introduce our representatives of editors and authors here, because the new concepts are not anymore globalization, informalization, and urbanization. They are, and this is our thesis for the book, they're actually digitalization, ecologization, and urbanization. That's state. And I would like you guys to introduce yourself. And I pitch to you those 3 concepts, and I would say I pitch to Melanie ecologization. Maybe you can introduce yourself through that concept. And I pitch to Michael Walczak the concept of digitalization. And I would pitch to my co-editor together with Georgine Theodore, Claire Hos Papanikolaou, the concept of urbanization. So let's work our way in here from Claire Hos back to me. So how would you introduce yourself through that concept?
Sure, thank you. And by the way, what an honor to be here. And Georgine Theodore is the co-editor from the New Jersey Institute of Technology and Interboro Partners in New York City. I'm actually a filmmaker, so there's an interesting transdisciplinary mode through which we made this book. I'm also doing my doctoral research about how the audiovisual register can tell us something about urbanization. And if there's something about urbanization, is that there's a lot of debunking of myths about what urbanization actually is. Sometimes we think of urbanization as city making. It's very tangible, but there are forms of urbanization that are sometimes intangible and difficult to grasp. So when we were making this book, we applied a concept that's very familiar in filmmaking, which is show, don't tell. Every one of the contributions in this book is about a very tangible project. And through those tangible projects, we wanted to make our way back to what the SDG11 actually is. So I sit here next to two contributors who wrote chapters about wind quality in cities and the way that wind quality actually shapes forms of urbanization in cities that perhaps have very specific topographical conditions, like Sarajevo, as in Michael Walczak's contribution, or about education, Melanie Fessel's contribution about the next generation of students in architecture and urban studies. And so all of these dimensions, although they might be intangible, actually are very tangible, and we have to find ways in order to measure that. This is what this book is about.
So let's go from the abstract, because SDGs are abstract, let's face it. Most people don't even know what SDG stands for. It's an acronym. I ask my students, they say, I don't know. But let's make this more concrete, and I'm asking Michael to introduce yourself through the concept of the digitalization that we're witnessing.
Yeah, so I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the ETH in Zürich and a founding partner of urban think tank Next. And what do we mean with digitalization? For us, we use that term in a form of digital urban twins. So it's basically like a copy of our environment in the virtual world. And what do I mean with copy, or the theory of change, also talking about digitalization, is that we bring all these aspects of urbanization, what Claire has introduced, into one environment. So the energy is inside, the people are inside, the citizens, the demographic structure, the built environment, the climate. So everything, because as planners were doing before, is they were in silos, thinking in silos, no? So we want to break this silo thinking and horizontally connect these layers with tools of digitalization. And what is also important is the shift of a very static way of city making, two-dimensionally before, 3D, but now to bring the fourth dimension into planning. Let's plan in time. And digital tools can help us to do that. Climate issues, air quality, for example, no, migration, also what we discussed yesterday, flows of people, no, it's changing, and we need to consider all of these dynamics. And the last point is also that for digital processes, the scale doesn't matter anymore. Before, we had to simplify everything in order to process it. Now, with digital tools, we can look at very complex things in a very large scale at the same time. So, for example, we don't only look on Sarajevo, on a city in a particular neighborhood, but we look at the whole Balkans, whole Europe, or whole planet Earth. No? So I think this is also this sort of change we're speaking about digitalization.
Thanks, Michael. And now, Melanie, if you would introduce yourself through the concept of ecologization, or through your methodological approaches that you contributed in the book.
Yes. I'm Melanie Fessel. I'm a practicing architect and urban designer. I did my doctorates at ETH on the topic of urban design education, and I'm now also professor of design and architecture on the topics of sustainability, aesthetics, and inclusion. And to speak about ecologization, I would say ecology is often seen as a natural phenomenon, but we should also include it as a social construct. So it's really about a socio-ecological approach to design. And I want to take a very different vantage point, which I also did for this publication here, and it's really about education and the methods we will have to use to build up the new generation of architects, designers that will contribute to this massive change that will happen. We're seeing it here today in Davos as well, right? We're in a big transitional phase, artificial intelligence, but it's really about how can we bring all of this innovation into the knowledge transfer process through universities and through those young minds that are eager to contribute to this change.
So we are here in Switzerland on an international forum, and I think Switzerland is also having this draw that so many people are coming here for this incredible humanitarian tradition. And probably not everybody knows that the SDGs are indeed a translation of the 1948 Human Rights Agenda. So what used to be the human rights, and people know about that too, you can look it up, it's actually principles, it's not laws and regulations, it's principles that most countries have signed and that they have declared themselves in the few remaining democratic governments at least to follow them. But I like to figure out also how through the lens that you just described, how we bring this sort of humanitarian perspective back into this discussion between smart cities on the one hand side and the natural on the other side and the urbanization. I think the question of the cultural dimension of urbanization is often underestimated. I also would say that in the discussion of the SDGs, we are sometimes reducing the debate to the reduction of CO2. That's not the point. That's a very narrow tunnel vision of it. And you know, the SDGs, it's a lot about female rights, it's about the quality of water, it's about these human rights turned into the next level. So where would you see also, and I would say anybody who wants to pick up on it, where would you see also this human dimension within urbanization, digitalization, or this ecological paradigm, Melanie, that you talked about?
Can I maybe interject here, because we're talking about the human dimension, and I think we also have to bring an additional concept that speaks about the more than human world that we also find in cities and that we often neglect to even address. So maybe just expanding on that term of human cultural also to include biodiversity and other species that live with us on this planet. I think that's going to be very crucial in the future.
No,
The two of you, yeah?
yeah,
Mike?
no, absolutely. What Melanie is saying is, speaking about AI, and this is now the core topic also of here in Davos now, is one thing is we're developing models, we're developing algorithms to do a lot of computation, but then the other thing is what happens on the ground, no? What you are saying. What do we actually see on the ground? What do people say? How do people behave? And how can we actually capture these? We always distinguish also between quantitative methods and qualitative methods. No, so we have numbers on one hand side, we have more sensitive information on the other side, and we developed for these processes a tool which we also described in the book. Is called Studio Mobile. It's a mobile research unit which actually goes into those humanitarian, what Hubert you mentioned, those neighborhoods like in Sarajevo, for example, which were not even in planning documentation before because they were all illegally constructed. So they were not in policies, and I think we can also speak about policy making here as an important driver for these processes. For what do we do all of this, and how do we translate this? Okay. That with that vehicle, it allows us to capture exactly those aspects of human behavior, of people which are marginalized, people which are illegal status, what you're saying, the more than human aspect, because we also go into the field.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so more than human, the policy, a quick response from Claire, and then I would say, we work our way back with a very short what-if question. I see you all is sort of giving me signals. Just a brief, very short statement, and then we go to the last round.
Well, I mean, we should really think about the terms that we use because that has a human impact. And we wrote about it in the introduction. It's worth repeating. We heard about it in a previous session. But there's a difference between cities and urbanization processes. Cities is a political entity within a larger process of urbanization. So if we change the scope of what we are referring to, we are able to think about the different tools that we can use and how they affect people in a different way.
Okay, so I'd like to close this session before we baptize our book, so we will need 2 minutes, I would guess, so that gives you everybody 10 seconds. I would like to have a final statement from all of you relating to this book. What if this book would be read by everybody? So what would people learn? Just one sentence from each of you.
Mine is very simple and to the point. What if you didn't have to buy this book, but you could scan this QR code and read it yourselves? Please do so and talk to us about it.
So what if technology and AI would align much stronger with citizens like all of you sitting here in the room and people?
What if we build up the next generation of designers to address the social and ecological challenges we're facing?
Yes. And what if we baptize this book and we pass on the stage to our next speakers? I see the time is up. But we see this book actually as a snowball effect. So this is why we brought here a nice Davos snowball to baptize our book. We really want you to scan this QR code. You get the book for free. It's open access from MTPI Publishers in Basel. It's a double blind peer review book, so you can get it for free. But we obviously, the old-fashioned way, we brought a real book, and instead of champagne or instead of plastic bottled water, we thought it's time to baptize it in the highest city of Switzerland, of Europe, I think, Davos, highest city of Europe. And we all know there's a lot of snow outside, so we baptize our book with ice and snow. Joël, please come up here. And we will do the real thing, okay? You have your hand on the book, everybody has it, so please. Okay, thank you. QR code is here.